What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with ScoopDuck on 3, coming to you guys with another Oregon football and recruiting mailbag. Like to do these each and every week if possible. And I'm joined, of course, by my guy, Travis Rooke-Ley. Travis, how we doing, man? Thanks for being here.
Pretty good, man. Season's a week closer. Excited to get into it today. Last week of summer for me, being a teacher, ready to go back. So good to be home, get the home setup going, and talk a little ball.
I'm glad that you got to take some vacations this summer because teachers are salt of the earth people. Anyone who works in education knows how tough it can be. My girlfriend's a teacher, so I know about all the work that goes into that. So props to you, and grateful that you're investing in the youth because they need all the help they can get. But let's get into a mailbag, man. It feels like a little bit since we've gotten to do this. We want to have this every week. Maybe we'll try to shoot for Mondays possibly during the year. I think that'll be great because we'll have a lot of stuff to talk about from the weekend. So you're usually emceeing this thing, and that's a huge help for me. I really appreciate it. So what do you have queued up from either Twitter or the ScoopDuck subscribers?
Yeah, for sure. Let's get into it. First question we got over from Twitter, and I'm sure it's a question that getting a lot of scuttle right now, just around duck circles and different things, because it's kind of a new situation for us. Question is, the 4 decommits in a month a cause for concern? What are your thoughts on that?
I think this can go a couple of different ways. I think just off rip, I'd say yes, because let's be honest, Travis, under Dan Lanning, Oregon fans aren't used to decommitments, and a lot of these decommitments, they have a little bit of an extra layer to it because they're flips. They're not just, hey, I'm going to back off, take the process slow, look at my options again. I think all of them have been flips to other schools. Josiah Sharma, the big D lineman from Northern California, flipped to Texas. Deshaun Brame, the tight end from Kansas, flipped to Tennessee. Who else do we have? We have I'm having a brain fart here. Isaiah Mosey flipped from Oregon to Nebraska, but that one was kind of a matter of time. It felt like with his dad joining the staff over there, and then there is one more, but I am drawing a blank. 4 decommitments. Was it maybe from the 26th class?
Gosh, I can't even think who the 4th was. We're bad hosts right now.
No, shoot. Who on earth is it? We're gonna be kicking ourselves by the time we remember it. I'm just running through.
Or this guy's messing with us, and there's actually only 3.
Let me see. I'm gonna do some research on the fly here because
while you look it up, I'll just touch on it real quick. I mean, I think that there's looking at it from a larger stance of okay, we've been having these decommits, which is certainly new for the staff. But I think at the same time, there's individual circumstance that goes into each of these recruitments. Obviously, with Mozzie, which I think is how you pronounce it. I mean, his dad got hired by Nebraska. So that's a unique circumstance. So I think to pin that one on the staff certainly feels like a little bit of a stretch to me. I mean, when it comes to Brame, I mean, that was a guy I was super excited about, not to act like we didn't want him, not to act like it's not a big loss, but at the same time, it's been well reported that there's some girlfriend in the picture there. There's some Tennessee specific stuff in the picture there. I think when you look at things from a larger picture, it's easy to say, oh, there's cause for concern, 3-4 decommits, oh, sky's falling. But when you look at individual circumstance and why these certain things are happening, each lines up and makes sense on that level. So it's new to us. I mean, I don't think we had many decommits the last 2 years, so I get it. But at the same time, looking at each scenario makes sense. It's not like we're losing home state guys. It's not like we're losing West Coast guys where it's oh, he was an Oregon lean all along. Let's look at circumstance that have a little bit of perspective here too.
So I couldn't figure out who the 4th one was, if there is in fact a 4th guy who flipped. But we can keep trying to figure that out on the fly here. Bottom line, Travis, like we're saying, Oregon fans aren't used to this. It's not something that's been a constant underlanding or a regular occurrence. But so I think like it's a little bit of a concern as far as just the momentum that you captured over the summer, all the work that you put in during those official visits. That's all very real. And obviously you look at that and you can't help but feel like, oh man, it feels like some of the wind has come out of the sails here. But at the same time, we got to also be real with ourselves and say, hey, there's about 4 months until pen meets the paper. It's Thursday, August 15th as we record this, but you guys are going to be listening to this on Friday, August 16th when it publishes. So there's still so much time left, Travis. And I know Justin's been talking about it over on the site at ScoopDuck.com. You guys got to come see us if you haven't already, and to get the best in Oregon football and recruiting. So little plug there. But Justin's been saying that this is kind of the second recruiting window that's going to be opening up. And that's also, I think, the way that I'm looking at it, right? When the games start, when Oregon's able to host recruits, when they put a great product on the field, like we all expect, I'm going to be out at games and practices getting scoop from people. There's going to be battles to get guys on campus for visits. So I think that Dan Lanning, Marshall Malco, and the rest of the staff have proven plenty in their couple of years at Oregon to show that they can get the job done. And I think Oregon's still in a great spot. They got a top 5 class, at least according to our rankings over at On3. And there's still a handful of guys that they're chipping away at, and they're going to stay in the picture with until the very end.
Yeah, and I think that, like, for as great as a Josiah Sharma would be, as great as an Isaiah Mazi would be, like, the depth we've built at receiver and defensive line right now, you never want to say for sure, but I'm not expecting those guys to be guys we look at 3 or 4 years down the line as, like, when we're answering mailbag questions in 4 years, we're not going to be say, that was the one that got away. These are guys that we're all for, like, building depth, but at the same time, like, we just got to understand, like, Junior Adams, Tony Tuioti, those guys have done, like, an incredible job of, like, building those rooms to a point where, like, you can withstand a 4-star guy decommitting. It's going to be all right. Deshaun Brame, on the other hand, like, that's a position of need. Like, that's one I hope we don't look back on. But we'll see how, like, tight end recruiting plays out this cycle.
So are you committing to joining the podcast for the next 4 years?
Hey, we keep having success on the field. I'm staying engaged, so this is a good way to do it.
Cool. Well, I'm going to hold you to that, but I always enjoy doing these. But to your point, Travis, I think that's another way to look at it. The depth that Oregon has built, it's not like we're over here, and I don't think you're saying this. I'm not saying it either. Like, oh, hey, it's going to be okay. None of these losses or these misses on the trail matter. They do. But recruiting has become so fluid. Guys take visits last minute that there could be a really good player, Travis, that signs with the Ducks come December that isn't even on our radar right now. We haven't even talked about, but they get him on campus for a visit. Maybe they flip him from another school. That's just the way things go. It's become very difficult to project, and things are changing so rapidly from each recruitment. So I feel like we could get into a whole nother pod just on that alone, but that was a great question to start us off with. Thank you to whoever asked it.
Yep, for sure. And on a similar, we'll just kind of stick with that same vein. I know you touched on it just a second ago, but after a relatively quiet signing day last cycle, do you see any fireworks for this December? Do you think there are any players Oregon is laying in the weeds for, or last-minute flips? I know it's kind of a question that we've touched on a little bit in the past and even today, but what do you see coming in the fall? And I know Justin kind of touched on some of this today too.
Yeah, so Justin had a little update over on ScoopDuck talking about some of the 2025 targets that Oregon's still involved with. Most notably, you got Jonah Williams, the big-time 5-star safety out of the state of Texas. He's supposed to come off the board on August 24th, and you have Oregon in the mix there. Texas A&M, Texas, LSU, USC is even getting some mention. I don't really put any stock into that. I don't think that Oregon is the leader here anymore. That is the team that has my RPM pick right now over on On3 and his recruiting profile. Pretty sure I'm going to change it. I'm just trying to figure out which school I'm going to be changing it to between now and his eventual announcement. I want to say Texas probably has the edge right now. especially because they stole the Texas A&M baseball coach. I think that's something that plays a little bit of a factor here and could give them a little bit more steam in that recruitment. But I think that's the most notable name right now. And then, of course, Michael Terry the third out of San Antonio. I think Oregon and Texas are neck and neck right now, but I feel like, again, I'm giving the slight edge to the Longhorns in that one. Maybe it's because he's an in-state guy, but at the same time, I think if you're an Oregon fan, you feel more confident about Michael Terry than you do Jonah Williams for another reason, that he's going to take his decision into the season. It looks like, school started and football is kicking off as soon as this week in Hawaii. They've already started it. Like, I'm going to go to my first game, planning to do Mater Dei and Corona Centennial next week. So I think he's going to be taking his decision into the fall. And I think for Oregon, it's not like the longer it goes, the more it goes in your favor. But the longer it goes, I think it just supports the fact that that one's real close.
Yeah. And I mean, I think to get to the specific question of like, do you see fireworks for this December? I mean, I think every school is going to experience some level of fireworks as this like season winds down. I mean, that's just the reality of the calendar now. I mean, if you think about last year, yeah, it wasn't as crazy as 2 years ago, but like, we were battling for a Dylan Gresham because he's having offers come in and negotiations come in. And then Ryan Pelham pops up on Sunday. That's just the new reality as far as I'm concerned. I get that, like, I mean, I feel like this isn't unique to the Oregon fan base, but just like fan bases and the specific fans that follow recruiting, just like ride the wave. And right now, like, we're not going to sugarcoat it. It's, Oregon doesn't have a lot of momentum on the trail right now. 100%. I'll be the first to admit it. At the same time, there's nobody out there that isn't predicting that Oregon's going to have an awesome season and make the playoff. Lanning and the staff, no matter what that, On3 Tennessee writer wants to say, like, builds incredible relationships with players and recruits and families that love him. So, like, you combine a great season on the field, you have those relationships built, you get down to November, December, you have a couple like weekends where you can get guys on campus, make your best offer. We'll see what happens. So I get it, but I think like the reality of the calendar is going to be like, this time is always going to be a little bit of a slower time. And for us that follow recruiting, like, we just want like news, commits, who's the next to commit. That's just like the reality of the business. But I think we just got to trust that like we're going to have a good season, and just like what's going to come of that is going to be positive.
It's funny to me, Travis, that you said Oregon doesn't have a lot of recruiting momentum right now, but they just got another top 100 player on Monday in Cody Green out of Mater Dei. And that one was important too, because they I don't think they missed necessarily on some of the Mater Dei guys, but there have been guys that they've been linked to that have gone to other schools, like Chuck McDonald, for example. I think that's probably one that they were okay with going out to SEC country. But yeah, what we're saying is the calendar is something that is, I think, contributing to the lack of momentum right now. I think there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And then if you're looking at the fireworks, I think that to some degree you're probably going to have some, because Oregon wants to have this class wrapped up, theoretically, the 2025 class, as soon as they can, right, Travis? But you got to recruit until the whistle blows. And that's, I guess you could say February, but for a majority of these guys, it's in December and then they get on campus. So there were some fireworks last year. Ryan Pelham flipped from USC to Oregon. I wasn't really confident that was going to be happening until a couple hours before, but I drove to Milliken, and what do you know, it happened. And then you had Jeremiah McClellan flip from Ohio State. That was really significant as well. So I think that there's going to be some fireworks, but it's just hard to say that this far down the line. If you wanted to take a guess for positions, you could guess tight end, linebacker, interior D-line, because that's where Oregon needs the most help right now and has had some ebbs and flows. So Noah McHale, Keelan Moses, some guys at linebacker to keep an eye on. And then, of course, Caleb Edwards, or I don't even know if Desan Brame is worth keeping an eye on again. I guess you could say, there's a lot of time. But Lincoln Cure maybe even, and Andrew Olesh, the Michigan commit that was recently offered by the Ducks. He's all the way out in Pennsylvania. Doesn't seem like they have a lot of juice there right now. He's only been committed to Michigan for about a month, but it's the Ducks. Like, there's going to be some fireworks to some degree. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, and I mean, it just doesn't. it just doesn't make sense to push for guys right now. As like frustrating as it is, it's like you're just opening yourself up there. You make your best push now, meet with families, whatever you need to do, and then that's just going to open back up come November, December. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to do it. So as much as we'd like to see that happen, because we're the degenerates who follow this stuff, like it just doesn't make sense. But what you do see is that like 26 push. And to be honest, there's another question on here, like who's the next Duck to commit for 25, or do we think it's a 26 recruit? Like, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if our next couple commits are still 26 kids over 25, which is like crazy. And you wouldn't see that before, but there's just these shifting timelines now where you see guys committing earlier from that 26 class. And then guys that are still in the boat for 25 are like more likely to take that to signing day. So I think you saw that with a guy like Cody Green this week. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see a couple other guys that we're in a good spot for maybe come out and visit this fall and commit early. And that 26 class is already looking pretty freaking awesome. And I think it sets up a lot better for us too, because of like I think there's just a far, just the location of big time 26 guys is a lot better for us. I don't know if you agree with that.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that one. As far as just the West Coast talent goes, there's a really solid crop of guys in 26. If you want to look a little farther down the line, in 2027, the California class of 2027 is going to be phenomenal, Travis. So I'm excited to continue covering those guys and just building these relationships, because you want to start them early, at least if you're a journalist like myself, because as it gets closer to them making their decision, you want to be someone that they trust and that they have a good relationship dating back for a while. So to go back to that question, Travis, and to answer it, I'm with you. I think that right now I wouldn't be surprised if the next guy that pops is a 2026, because the only decision date that we have for a 25 is probably Jonah Williams. I think Michael Fasusi might be tomorrow or sometime soon, but no one's expecting him to go to Oregon at this point in time. So one of the things that I think Dan Lanning and the staff have done a tremendous job of when it comes to managing their recruiting calendar and managing the classes is recruiting multiple classes at once. Like that was something, for as hot as Oregon was when Mario Cristobal was at the helm, I was always kind of wondering, okay, that's great, but you got to try to make that put, like, all the top programs are pushing into that next class. And if you're looking at 2026, kind of a cliche, but something I hear a lot around SoCal and just the high school scene is the junior season is the most important season for these guys. That's when a lot of these guys explode. That's when a lot of these guys are going to be taking a lot of their big visits. Contact is more open than when they were underclassmen as freshmen and sophomores. So I think that Oregon's attention and emphasis that they've placed on the 2026 class is super vital, and it's already paying off in a big way. They have the number one class in the country for 2026, according to our rankings over at On3. Tremendous quality, headlined by Tony Cumberland, I think, or Cody Green. I can't remember which one it is, but you have Jonas Williams in there, a great quarterback. I think they want to go for another quarterback and Ryder Lyons as well, and then Tredarian Ball out of the state of Texas, a highly touted running back. So hard to ask for a better start in 26 if you're Dan Lanning.
Yeah, and I think you'll start to see. I know some little stuff's been trickling out, but that Ohio State weekend is going to be a banger, and I think you'll start to see a lot of 26s start lining up visits. I mean, the way our home schedule sets up, it's pretty interesting because we're home week 1 and week 2, which typically are like lighter visit weekends, and then we don't have a Saturday home game until Ohio State. And it's hard for guys to visit that Friday night Michigan State the week before. So I don't know, that whole weekend, that whole scene around that is going to be pretty crazy. And I bet you'll see a huge group of like priority targets, 26 guys that could yield some early commits. And then with that, I mean, that's probably the weekend you try to sneak in a couple 25s who maybe you've been laying in the weeds for. And have them visit then, because once again, you're probably next big recruiting weekend after that. You're probably waiting until Washington, because that also, assuming the season goes as we hope, is probably going to be another pretty wild environment in Autzen that you want guys to visit for. So I think you'll get a sense of, I'm targeting that Ohio State weekend for a lot of things, but recruiting wise, I think you'll get a good sense of like what 26 guys we're going to probably push for then. And then at the same time, between, you, me, and the listeners, I'd be pretty surprised if 25 kids popped up that weekend, because that's, I'm sure, one that they're kind of targeting and looking at in terms of some guys that they might be looking to flip.
The Washington game, any rivalry game, is always a prime opportunity to get some top talent into town for visits. I got a quick follow-up to that, Travis, before we get to our next question. But before we get into that, got to give a big thank you to one of our sponsors of the Duck Dish podcast, and that is Ranchito Grill in Springfield. Not sure what your plans are for dinner tonight, but head on over to Ranchito Grill at 1537 Mohawk Boulevard. You got to try their homemade tortillas. They got great food, a great environment, and they will take care of you. Say what's up to my guy Ruben and let him know that Max Torres sent you. Had a chance to go out to Ranchito the last time I was in Eugene for the spring game, the last week of spring ball, and Ruben did in fact take care of me and the rest of some of the Duck fans that were out there in attendance. So go check him out if you haven't already. If you're looking for a bite to eat, incredibly grateful for his support of my show. And Travis, the follow-up I had there on the recruiting weekend visits, I'd be curious to see how you see this impact. Oregon has 2 bye weeks this year, and I don't think that they're going to put a big emphasis on recruiting in the first bye week because it's so early into the season. But now they have Thanksgiving weekend open, and that's something that they haven't had in the past. That's usually when they have the Civil War, the rivalry game against Oregon State, in that Friday after Thanksgiving. But I wonder if they're going to be able to do something unique, or I'm just curious how they use that extra time in recruiting capacity. Because as I was saying that, I was thinking to myself, well, Max, people probably aren't going to be coming because they're going to be spending the holiday with their families. But you never know. People can hop on flights and get anywhere or drive anywhere in a short amount of time, depending on where they're located. But I don't know. I'm just kind of curious how that's going to impact the recruiting for Oregon, seeing that they have that extra bye week.
Yeah, for sure. And well, just to clarify, that the bye is prior to Thanksgiving. So it's that Saturday, like right before the long holiday. But I mean, I think either way, it's always interesting with bye weeks, because especially what you were saying the time before about like this staff likes to work multiple classes at a time. Like, you tend to see a big split between sending coaches out on the road and maybe hosting a few like priority guys back home. So a weekend like that, I think late in the season, I mean, I'm guessing most teams are done playing at that point, high school wise, mid-November or so. So, it's an interesting thing. You're considering, do I want to send out a bunch of my staff out to like see 26 kids to start doing some evals on different guys? Or is that a weekend where we want to host 1 to 2 like priority targets at home, give them some special treatment, stuff like that? So I think that's a balance you always kind of have to navigate. I'm guessing that early bye week, September 21st, you'll probably see a lot of the staff like out on the road. Who knows? Probably catching some of the same games maybe you are down in SoCal. But I think one thing Lanning does do a really good job of is making sure that like the whole staff is in on guys. And so that if, Coach Adams is down on the road checking out a target, there's still, a guy back home in Eugene who's also built a relationship with the kid where if he wanted to visit, you could still host him. So I think that's one of the big benefits of like that more holistic recruiting approach that I know the staff believes in.
And maybe the way that I can look at it, and then we'll get to our next question here, is and thanks for correcting me on when that bye week actually falls. It's not after Thanksgiving; it's before Thanksgiving. But I wonder if that'll help Oregon maybe navigate things a bit, because they're going to have that conference title game weekend. I mean, regardless of what happens with Oregon in the 2024 season, if they are in the Big Ten title game, if they're not, that's go time. That's when you're trying to close on all your top guys before the pen meets the paper. So maybe having that extra bye on the calendar could end up coming in handy in ways that we don't see coming right now.
Yep, for sure. I'm going to kind of fuse two questions into one here because I think they go together. So first question, which coaches do you think are going to be the hardest to retain after this season? And then a second question that I think relates to that is there anyone on staff who might get first look at offensive coordinator should Stein bounce to a head coaching spot this off season?
This is an interesting one to look at, Travis, because when I answer this, I don't want anyone to think that I'm speculating that this coach is going to leave. But the truth of the matter is, Oregon's got a really good coaching staff, and a lot of these guys are just crushing it on the field, on the recruiting trail, however you want to look at it. I think that the first name that comes to mind for me is Junior Adams. Junior Adams has done a phenomenal job developing wide receiver talent at Oregon and recruiting wide receivers to come to Oregon, whether that's Tez Johnson from the transfer portal, Evan Stewart from the transfer portal. Trayshawn Holden's a guy that I'm really excited about. I think he's going to have a bigger year this year than he did last year. And then especially the high school ranks. Junior Adams, I feel like is at a place now finally that I think, not that he wasn't appreciated at his previous spots, but you look at his resume and what he's been able to do. I think you would maybe have expected some bigger stops. Maybe he gets some NFL calls. I don't know if he wants to go to the NFL or if he's happy at Oregon for the long term, seeing that he is a West Coast guy at heart, originally from the Bay Area. What is he? That's what you have to ask yourself with all of these guys, Travis. What's the long term play for them? Do they want to settle down in Eugene and raise their family there? I tend to think that you're probably a proponent of that as a native, but I think Junior Adams has to be at the top of that list. And then another one could potentially be Alik Terry, I think, because he's been such a strong hire since coming over from the Vikings. And maybe he was one that some fans were a little bit skeptical of because he was so young and he'd only had his own offensive line room once at Hawaii. But I was a tremendous fan of that hire when Dan Lanning made it. He had some continuity because he was previously on the staff under Mario Cristobal. And I think that those are two of the guys, aside from Will Stein, that are probably looking like some of the more valuable pieces of Oregon's staff. But you could make an argument for everybody. I mean, Stein's doing a hell of a job. Chris Hampton's doing a hell of a job. Rashad Wadood, even though he's younger and kind of working his way up the ranks, he's a really valuable piece of what Oregon wants to do in the secondary. So I think those are just some of the names that came to mind for me.
Yeah, and I think the key point that you make there is like you just have to know what these guys' like intentions are, and what their goals and what their future. There's a lot of guys out there who are just happy to be a position coach and want to be a position coach. There are guys out there who want to be a coordinator and just want to stay a coordinator. And as much as we'd love for a guy like Will Stein to just like be our Brent Venables for 20 years, it's like, is that realistic? I don't know. So it's hard. I think about like job fits for Stein, and I assume we're going to have another top 5 offense. And if Baylor has another tough year and Dave Aranda gets fired, like Will Stein's going to be at the top of Baylor's list. It's a school like that. Texas native, Texas ties. Whether he'll take it, I don't know. I just mean like if Duck fans are expecting that Will Stein's going to be here for the next 5 to 10 years, like as much as I would love that, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying we can't expect that. So what we can expect is that every hire Lanning's ever made has been great. The hire of Samples has been awesome. I can see him growing within that system. He has a wide receiver experience. He has running back experience. As you said, Junior Adams has been great. This entire operation like looks long-term at that and wants to develop coaches within the pipeline. So I think if you do see a guy like Will Stein leave, I mean, not one of us, and I'll be the first one to admit it, had Will Stein at the top of my offensive coordinator list when Dillingham left. But I'll also say that there can't be a complaint from any of us either about the job that he's done. So I think that like I have full trust in Lanning, and if Stein does get a job that's awesome for him and he wants to be a head coach and has a good power 4 option, like power to him, and we'll be all right.
You have to trust what Lanning's done as far as hiring guys. Tosh Lupoi is another phenomenal example as well. It feels like his arrival at Oregon couldn't have come at a better time. I know that some people in 2022 were pretty skeptical of Tosh Lupoi as a defensive coordinator, and I never put any stock into that. I think it just took a little bit of time for him to get the right guys into his system and kind of get his feet underneath him. And then look what he did last year. We're going to have one of the best defenses in the entire country. And they're continuing to attract more top talent year after year. And the arrow continues to point up. And regardless of what happens with the coaching carousel, all that matters if you're an Oregon fan is that Dan Lanning doesn't go anywhere. And he's done nothing but double down on the Ducks every single opportunity that he's gotten. And you never want to see any coaches leave. If you could ask Dan Lanning right now, do you want to keep every one of these guys another year? He'd probably say yes, or just you want to keep continuity and keep your staff together. Every coach does, but that's not the world we live in, and you got to be able to adapt. And we know that Lanning will do that, has done that, and won't rush any of these hires if he has to make them.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the two pinnacle programs in our sport over the last 5 years have been Alabama and Georgia, and they have turnover every offseason. It's because their guys are getting opportunities and they hire good coaches. And when those good coaches leave, they hire good coaches again. So that's just the nature of, being at this level. Let's get one last question in here, just about the current roster and kind of fall camp, getting ready for the current season. I know I got a couple on my end, but what players are generating buzz in camp so far? Or what have you heard? I know you and Justin, I think, touched on a little bit of this earlier this week, but for viewers that might have missed that, what do you got?
Yeah, the one name that I've been hearing recently, and admittedly I need to get on the phone making some calls, so that's on me. But I was kind of wondering where I could share this, but I had a pretty decent I had a good source tell me that Kamar Matudi is generating some buzz in fall camp, and that the light switch has kind of flicked on for him. And he's one of those SoCal guys that I've gotten to cover pretty closely before he arrived at Oregon, and he transferred from Campbell Hall to Los Alamitos for his senior year. And I think I don't want to say fell short of expectations, but just didn't have the year that a lot of people maybe expected from him. When he was at Campbell Hall, he was playing both sides of the ball. He was a running back as well and just killed it. But moving to Los Alamitos, I think you have higher quality competition. He was able to just focus on linebacker. And if you look at the guy, he looks like a physical freak. I mean, he's exactly what you want in a linebacker, 6'1", 6'2", 220, 230. But that doesn't mean that you're going to just pick up the college game and the college speed and the Oregon playbook overnight. But he was one of those guys that enrolled early. I saw him in San Antonio for the Adidas All-American Bowl, and then he went out to Oregon to get things going. And it seems like he's starting to pick things up. And it was funny because I want to say that the source that I had spoken with about Kamar was maybe not as enthusiastic about how he was looking from what he was hearing and seeing before he told me that. So Oregon signed a trio of amazing linebackers: Braden Platt, Kamar Matudi, Dylan Williams. But Kamar was always one of my favorites just because he always gave me so much of his time and was super respectful and just loved talking ball.
Yeah, and I mean, I've said all along, I think you'll see one of those freshman linebackers playing, and I think he's your best bet there at that. I know that some people
over Platt.
Say that again.
You're saying Matudi over Platt this year?
I think so, yeah. The people I trust, like kind of more in the weeds film guys, said they like what they saw in the spring game from him. I think you'll see a couple of those guys get some reps early on in the season, and kind of translating some other guys I've heard. It's a good time to be a linebacker in Oregon's system because the things I hear coming out of the defensive line are pretty dang good. I think I just laugh so much anytime I listen to one of these national podcasts and they question Oregon's ability to transition to the Big Ten. I just wish they could watch our defensive line of Birch, Harmon, Caldwell, and then those three freshman edges from last year, Amari Washington. That's going to be a heck of a unit. And that whole unit is generating buzz. And I think to be a linebacker behind there, you're going to have you're going to have some easy work to clean up playing behind those boys. And then the last guy I just want to mention that I've heard really great things about since the spring, and that's even gotten like louder come fall, is Cam Alexander. I think he like flew a little bit under the radar coming from UTSA and not like as much hype as Jabbar Muhammad or even like, where's he going to play? We have Jaleel Florence. We have, the JC transfer, Lalea, all these true freshmen. It's like Cam Alexander is really good. He's going to be in the NFL next year. And I think that entire defense is just going to be really fun to watch this year.
Yeah, I was really excited about the Cam Alexander edition, even if it wasn't maybe the most exciting one on paper with him coming over from UTSA. But Oregon has a couple of guys with those UTSA ties, right? Stein being chief among them. Antonio Parks, who works with the DBs, was another guy that was instrumental in that addition, and he brings a lot of speed to that room, which, quite frankly, Travis, the Ducks just didn't have enough of at times last year. So I think that you're maybe looking at one of the best cornerback rooms that Oregon's had since 2019 with DeAndre Lenore and Thomas Graham, and maybe just overall secondaries. So Cam Alexander's a guy that I think I'm really excited to see, just to see him let it rip and see how he stacks up with some of these guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if we're a couple of weeks into the season and we're saying, hey, do you see what Cam Alexander did in that game? Because that's going to really, I think, I don't know, vilify, was that the word I was looking for? Verify just, why Oregon wanted this guy, because Oregon didn't take anybody in the transfer portal that they didn't think could help them right now. That's not Lanning's approach. You're not bringing a guy in, even if he is multiple years. I don't think you're necessarily bringing a whole lot of guys in if you don't think that they can help you sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you just saw that. I mean, what's so frustrating about last year is, you needed a guy like that. You needed a Jabbar Muhammad. You needed a safety with a little more range for the two games that ended up mattering. And I think you'll see the same thing this year where like we've got a schedule where we can ease into some moments. We've got a lot of matchups where we might not need like lock down guys out wide. But when push comes to shove and it's the Ohio States, the Georgias, the Texas of the world, like that's where you're going to feel that impact of like those additions that we made in the portal.
Yeah, they've been one of the better teams in the transfer portal for the past couple of years now, and this is looking like a pretty special group. They're all in on this 2024 season, and it's time to put up or shut up.
I'm ready. Can't wait.
Well, it seems like we've gotten through all of our questions from the mailbag. Travis, correct me if I'm wrong, but any final remarks before we wrap up the pod?
No, that's what we got for today. I appreciate all the people sending over the questions. We do our best to kind of get through a kind of different topics and different versions each every week. And just looking forward to talking ball every Monday, doing some game recaps once the season gets going here. So excited to keep going.
Right on. I'm excited too. We are just about 2 weeks away from Oregon's season opener against the Idaho Vandals in Eugene, Oregon at Autzen Stadium. So can't wait for that. And I'm ready for some more recruiting stuff to hopefully start churning here in the next couple weeks to a month and get back out there on the high school scene. Just depending on when you guys listen to this, I'm going to go to a couple scrimmages on Thursday and Friday, Santa Margarita Catholic and Chaminade. So two big programs here in SoCal in the LA area, and then making my way down to San Diego, if you're an Anchorman fan with Will Ferrell. Going to try to go see Mount Miguel against Modern Day Catholic in Chula Vista. Brandon Arrington is the big name I want to watch in the 2026 class out of Mount Miguel. He's a DB receiver type, blazing speed, and someone that's on Oregon's radar here early, seeing that like we've been talking about, I think that this West Coast class is going to be a little bit better in 2026. So super excited for that. If you guys want to find more of Travis, you can follow him on Twitter/X at Travis Rooke-Ley. If you want to find more of me, you can follow me on any platform at Torres Sports. Do us a favor and subscribe to the ScoopDuck on 3 YouTube channel. And definitely make sure you check out the last episode I recorded where I was joined by 5-star Oregon wide receiver commit DeCorian Moore. Talk Ducks, Duncanville, and so much more. So really happy about that episode. Go give it a listen if you haven't, and share the show. share the Ducks Dish podcast with your friends, with your family, and with other Duck fans. But until next time, I hope everyone has an awesome weekend. And thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast.